It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. Hey, it's the podcast. Welcome. Podcasters, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Chad Jetner.
I'm Peter Lawrence.
I'm Nick Bruecken.
And I'm Kyle Bacher. And today we're doing part one of a three-part series. We asked Nick to be here because he is the, I don't know what I'd call you.
Nick is
a
fine.
coaching.
He's the Ted Lasso of
formation. Yeah. Project management, Scrum. What's your title this week, Nick?
It's delivery.
Delivery. Yes. So we're talking about teams. We're talking about like forming a team, the traditional, forming, storming, norming, performing, in three parts though. So today we're going to talk about fielding a team.
Okay.
And then we're going to talk about kind of forming that team and go down into the weeds. I'm just going to preface this by saying that I looked back on my entire career and realized that I have been on very few teams.
I was going to say, did you realize that your largest team size was one?
Most of the time, my team size has been one. So communication has been excellent. Clear leadership, great participation. Chad is currently leading a team.
I am.
Excellent. Peter, are you part of a team on your project? Or
I am. I'm part of a team.
Excellent. And I guess we're the podcast team doing stuff.
We are.
We teamed up. So, Nick, what is fielding a team?
Well, obviously it kind of starts with what do we need a team for, and then go from there. So I think in our vocation of software development, we're obviously looking for some sort of, development team or design teams or so on and so forth. It can be one team, it can be multiple teams, but it kind of stems from what are we doing and why.
So you've got an idea for a project, you need it done, and then you bring in a person, or you have a person designated to field that team.
Yep. Or group of people. Yeah. So then you start hiring and obviously at this point, let's just assume some certain things, shall we? Right. We've got a thing that we need to have done. We've determined it requires X, Y, and Z tech, background. And now we got to go find the talent. And it goes into, I think, a couple of things when you're fielding a team. I think one, besides just how much of the team do you need to accomplish your task, but, what are their skill set? How do you figure out if that's, if what they say is meaningful and true, and what's the fit? I actually think one of the hardest things is figuring out that part, especially when you're trying to build not just individuals that collectively make up something, but an actual team where you're working together and setting certain parts of yourself aside to accomplish a greater goal, if you will. If I can be preachy.
Do you often actually get to choose and field a team, or are you just dealing with a list of names, bodies that were given to you to work with?
Bit of both, Kyle. Bit of both. I think in our vocation, right, of consulting, sometimes you are handed something, a group of people that you now get to try to form into a team. That has its own opportunities. Currently, I'm also you're allowed to participate in the interview process. You're allowed to participate in the structure in terms of before we even interview, what do we need? I don't know if Peter and Chad, what your experience has been, but obviously, not being a developer, I often and if I'm hiring developers or not being QA and hiring QA, I like to ensure that we have some level of local expertise to help facilitate that process. so that I'm
So what do you mean by local?
Maybe somebody who does what the person we're hiring does, so that I have some expertise.
So you have
somebody who knows. Yeah.
Have an onboard expert for talking to the other so-called experts.
That's right. Yeah. And if they're not comfortable with that, asking them what would be good questions to ask to uncover some of those, those things and get confidence in their skill set.
So to Kyle's question, like I've been involved on both sides of that, right? Where I get to pick the entire team, and now I get to selectively pick members of the team for not to get too much into what I'm doing today, but like we're actively involved in, the interview process, the hiring process, and then I think Nick touched on this, making sure they're just a fit for the team. And for me, I'm always like more than happy to bring on, from a developer perspective, junior developers, right? As long as you can kind of have an intuition about the fellow you're bringing on, if they're going to fit with the team, right? Like we can ramp up skill sets fairly easily. I've always thought that it's been a lot harder to change a personality that is just going to clash with the rest of the team. So for me, when I'm building a team, it's kind of two things, right? 75% personality, team fit, everything else, 25% skill set. Is it the skill set? I mean, obviously, right? You're building a Spring Boot application. Hey, man, it'd be really great if you've done Java development before, like kind of a key ingredient of what we're doing here.
Right.
But Stack Overflow exists. So, and you've got experienced developers that can help build your skill set if we need to, right? But if you're not personality-wise, if you're just not going to gel with the team, there's very little chance of that ever working. So I don't know, Peter, would have.
Yeah, and going into clients, you're sometimes handed 3/4 of a team. Here's 3/4 of your team. You can bring in one or two others, or sometimes you're handed the entire team, right? And you're just part of that team. And okay, ready, go. And you kind of have to, not necessarily do team building exercises, but sort of figure out what is going to make this team function the best. Because I got dropped, man. No fair. All right. So yeah, if I was basically saying, like, if you're presented with a team, you kind of have to figure out how to fit best within that team and what makes them tick, right? So sometimes donuts are enough. Sometimes donuts aren't even in the realm of things that will possibly help this team out, right? Like, nope, donuts aren't going to fix that. They all hate each other, and we're gonna have to get to the end anyway. So
yeah, that's
pretty rare.
That is a thing for sure. But yeah, I agree with Chad on that with fit. And that's primarily what I kind of do in the interview process as best as I can, I think is where I contribute the most, because not being an expert in any really one thing, but being aware of a lot of it in my role, I think it's really helpful to understand what we're looking for, where our gaps are, both from a skill set, but also in that gelling. A lot of times a great personality who maybe, to Chad's point earlier, doesn't have maybe the strongest skill set, but can learn it, can be a major addition in a positive influence versus somebody who clearly has all the expertise, but does not work well with others. Maybe it's, you try to figure out how you can best utilize that, or make that decision, a determination that if we're looking for an expert, we need somebody to kind of be that architect or somebody to guide everybody in a unified, I guess, design or something like that, that maybe a great personality is less important, because the product and the team will benefit most from expertise.
Sometimes Sammy Hagar joins Van Halen. Sometimes Sammy Hagar sings by himself, right? And, both can be good music, but some things work better, right?
That's absolutely, that's a good metaphor. Yeah.
So you've got your interviews and your picks. You have your idea of what your team needs to be. you're going to put the band together now. You've got everybody except your front man picked out. Where does leadership come in? Like, are you going to lead that team, Nick, or do you have to also bring in someone in that leadership role, or does it even need to have a leadership role? Can they just kind of run democratically?
Oh boy, it depends. And there's many levels of leadership, right? I definitely think that, this gets to what kind of what are we running? Are we running a flat organization? Are we trying to make the team equally contributing, excuse me? Gosh, that just depends. On what the team would most benefit by. I think it's a rare thing to find a group of people who actually function in a totally pleasant state with egos not really in the way. Everybody's really focused on what's best for the product. Most of the time, you do need to have somebody who's kind of on the rudder, and sometimes that's a big personality. Like sometimes to play off the metaphor, you got, the act is Billy Joel, and you just need band behind him. And sometimes you're actually, needing a band where everybody's equally contributing at every instrument level, and collectively you're the product, right? What's the band name we want to go with today? Is it Van Halen?
I think that one's taken already.
I don't know that I've ever been a part of a perfectly democratic team that's worked well, right? Like democracies are messy. I've been more a fan of kind of a representational republic. That seems to work well, where like everybody, kind of, there's a voice, right? And that voice kind of sets the tone and handles a lot of, team norms and kind of how we do things. And then there's everybody on the team has a say in how things happen. But there is not necessarily a dictator. I feel like that's negative.
I think ideally you want somebody that's kind of doing servant leadership and sees leadership as a supporting role, but decisions have to be made. Tie votes have to be broken. Like, there's a certain amount of authority that might need to happen, and then it also depends on like how structured and formal that team needs to be. Like, the more structured and formal it needs to be, the more you need leadership that has like the authority or gravitas or whatever to maintain that structure.
There's a lot of levers and a lot of variables. Some teams are made up of only contractors, for example. Right. Some teams are a mix of FTEs of the company and contractors. And as in my role, I think the levers that you're needing to kind of pull and guide can represent both who the people are and what they represent to each other. The different levels, like, Chad, you mentioned, junior developers and senior, and, other people who have a natural leadership and other people who want it, but maybe aren't the best accustomed to it. How do you navigate those waters in a way that you find yourself being a manager in a lot of ways, where you're managing personalities, but you're also managing development and professional growth, and you're looking for opportunities while you're doing the work, right? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to create something, but you're also looking for opportunities so that the team is happy and that they're motivated and that they're constantly being challenged in ways. And you're also looking at ways to protect the team from each other sometimes. And you have to do it maybe clandestine, like behind the scenes a little bit.
Certainly have to play referee occasionally, right?
You do. And how you do that is important, because you want everybody, at the end of the day, everybody just wants to be heard. They don't necessarily need to be right. and so you have to create the space.
Wait, what?
Let's not be hasty here.
to allow that to happen, right? There's the big one at a client. There's actually a phrase we use, which is citation, please. So if you have an opinion and you're a little emotional about it, we bring up citation, please. Like, prove your point. Why? I feel your passion. Tell me why it's best for this situation, this product decision, or this process decision, whatever you're dealing with. It helps level set a little bit.
That's a nice way to put it, and nice clean way, as long as the team agrees to that. Like, hey, we're going to be passionate about some of this. Sometimes, charging after the latest, greatest JavaScript framework may or may not be the best choice for the project, right? Like, well, we think this project's going to be around for 25 years. We probably don't want to chase the brand new JavaScript library that's been out for 3 weeks. We maybe want to go with something a little bit more seasoned and with a little bit more support, even though that JavaScript library is very cool.
And someone is really excited about it.
Super excited.
Exactly. Pedal to the metal, Peter. Like, go with something that somebody came up with last week. That's always the best thing. So Nick, how soon, forming a team, do you start to establish? And one of the things that we did early on is we established our team norms and team working agreements, right? And it's basically, it was, when I say a representational republic, we all just kind of said, okay, what can we reasonably say are working hours and other norms? And number one on our list, I had to pull it up here, our team norms, number one on the list is literally it just says, be cool. That's number one.
Ooh, nice.
And there was a fella that joined the project late, and we always introduced them to our team norms, it's all this stuff, and he said, be cool. What does that mean? Like, well, if you have to ask,
Joking,
kind of an early indicator that this might be an issue. But other team norms, core hours 9 to 3, hey, keep on top of pull requests, all this other stuff, kind of wishy-washy and touchy-feely, but that's one thing that we do early on. And it, like, as long as you throw it out there and have folks participate in what that is,
right,
it does kind of foster this, I don't want to say community. Is it community or
Anchor.
Feeling of like your voice matters, you're
you've part got of the foundation team that you're all on now. Yeah, absolutely. And that's immediate, by the way, Chad, like right away. And as new people are hired, it's the first thing I go over with them when I have my one-on-one on their first day is, what's our team agreement? What's our definition of done? What is the expectation of you? And then we review them, right? I don't know how often you circle back to those things, but I always think whenever once you kind of have an established team and a new person comes on, that's usually a great time to review, hey, are we actually holding ourselves to this? What matters on this and what doesn't anymore? What have we matured out of? What have we maybe overlooked and taken for granted? And to your point, it's another opportunity to kind of band together.
Do you use the retro for that kind of thing? Like, hey guys, we're not doing this thing that we agreed to. Like, we all said we'd be on top of pull requests, and there's 3-week-old pull requests out there right now. Maybe we should step that up a bit. And that's just a bad example. That usually doesn't happen, but
no, it actually does happen. No, I think retros are a great opportunity for it. My experience, we don't usually circle back to the team agreement all the time on a retro. Maybe early when we are forming. I guess that's the theme of today that we're finding out.
Sure.
It's always good to go back and review it a little bit and say, are we doing this? And if not, does this still matter? Or if not, is it maybe because we thought this wasn't as big a deal and it is, and we can focus on that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that if we had something in our team agreement and we haven't been following it, and it has had zero impact on our, it didn't matter that we weren't following it. It didn't matter that we didn't do that one thing, and it's never come up. Well, now you're reviewing the team agreement at a future meeting. And it's like, hey, I just noticed we're not doing this thing, but you don't really have any like instances to support why it's important to do it. Like, it's a good time maybe to clear it out. It's like, if you don't have a why, if you can't point to it and say, this is what this happened, and this is why we do this thing that we all agreed to do when we started. This is why it's in the team agreement.
Yeah, this is why we actually said, be cool, Joe. You weren't cool the other day. This is in the team agreement.
Right.
Got to be cool.
Be cool.
Yeah. Do you often use the team agreement as evidence or
a bludgeon?
Yeah.
No,
No.
I try not to.
I don't. Yeah, I don't either.
Almost never. No.
The act
But
of
you can't
putting
take people aside.
I
and
tried
say,
to. Yeah. Like, I had a 3-person team, and one of the people was not like on the team,
Right.
like part of the team. And so assigning tasks, one of the things I wanted was, we're going to store these things in this place so that we can review them as we're working on them. So I can go in and take a look and see how it's going.
For communication.
And we can collaborate and all of that kind of stuff. And no, gonna take it, gonna keep it, and then gonna show it to you when it's done. It didn't help. Like, I just realized that wasn't a problem I could solve, that I couldn't work around, like keeping peace with the team members and whatnot, like keeping things moving forward. I had to let go of some stuff. That's when I learned I didn't like leading teams.
Well, the team agreement with anything, it's like, what's the spirit behind it? So just simply saying, I'm quoting this line we all, agreed to, is one thing, but oftentimes context matters, especially when you're trying to coach up a team member who is maybe not, for lack of a better phrase, falling in line with what we're all trying to do. But,
right.
In that example, Kyle, right, I would have said something like, there seems to be a trust issue. You want to hold on to this and not share, earlier. But what I'm trying to establish is a collaboration environment, a collaborative environment. And by doing that, we share. We know it's not perfect. We trust each other to understand and assume positive intent. That's my one, Chad. It's not be cool, although I'll try to use that next time because I like it. I'm always assume positive intent. So I'll reference that back as sort of a calling card too. Like, it's getting a little heated in here. We're all assume positive intent. We all mean well,
right?
But point is that I think that kind of getting to the spirit of things and the context is also very, very important. That's why a team agreement is nice, but it's not like, we don't want it to be too prescriptive. We want it to be a guide, not a manual.
Well,
it's not a bill of rights, right? We're not going to litigate it and it's a North Star. That's what we're shooting for.
And create it as a team, right? Ideally, when the team forms, you as a team come together and build this working agreement. You don't just like hand out my ideal working agreement. Here you go. Everybody vote yes, because this is what we're doing. It's more about what goes on the working agreement. Start with a blank slate and put things on that are important to those people present, right?
And with everything, it's in the moment. So when we're forming a team and it's our day one and we've never met each other or very loosely met each other, we want to start somewhere. And everybody says, these are the 5 things that we think are most important. And we go. And then, and I work in an iterative spirit, whether we are or not at the client, we'll try to review that every couple of weeks to say, what's most important now that we've actually started working with each other? And now that we've started working in this, environment and tech stack, are these still important, or what else is? Like, I have a hard rule on retros where we only talk about 2 or 3 things. Everybody can throw all the things they want up on the board, but we try to focus on 2 or 3 things per sprint to either improve on or repeat, because otherwise you're just setting yourself up for failure and everybody agreeing not to do any of it.
More than 3 action items means 0 action items, right?
Yeah.
Well, we didn't accomplish any of our 47 things that we were trying to accomplish this sprint. Weird.
What's better? Is it better to work up to your capacity, or is it better to try to work well beyond your capacity and then dial it back?
Oh, we're still trying to define our capacity at this stage. Right?
That's so early on. We did this too, like shoot for the stars and then see where we land. Right.
Yeah.
Like I mean, and to Nick's point, like you don't know what your capacity is until you've gone through, sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3. At the end of sprint 3, you kind of gotta, okay, this is roughly what it is. And that's where you can say, okay, now when we define sprint 4, are we going to shoot for, are we still shooting for the stars, or are we going to kind of bring it down into the atmosphere a little bit?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I always say we know
you
our
don't always know
capacity.
where the line is till you cross it, right? You don't know the breaking point till you hit it. So reaching for the stars and then going, okay, we did it, but we're all like useless now for a week because we just spent 80 hours last week being awesome.
Right. Do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. No deal. No, I think you have to operate under the normal guidelines if you can of capacity, which we all know, right? When you have a team, you know how many team members are there, you know what their availability is. So if they're, full time, so you know that that's the truth. What you don't know yet is your productivity and your predictability. And that's what you're trying to uncover as a team. And then you try to improve on that and find some stability, because at the end of the day, your ability to be predictable helps drive a lot of the decisions that are feeding you your work. And
Right.
if you can't do that, then the whole thing is chaotic. And then you're just being told, get something done, which is not possible. And they're not listening to you anyway, because you can't tell you what is.
Well, and aren't you mostly at the beginning trying to figure out, like, okay, we get together as a team, we estimate how big the story is, we do the story, we see how close we came. If our estimates are all, for example, 13s, and we get them all done in 1 hour, then we know we can accomplish 13 points in an hour. And then the next sprint comes and they're all 13s again, and it takes us a week for each story. Okay, we're bad at estimating. Let's tighten that up a little bit.
Yeah.
Chad, you look like you were jumping in there.
That's where I was going with you're really not going to know for, a couple sprints at the very least, right? Like to your point, Peter, the first time we're going to be horrible at estimating. The second time we're going to also be horrible. The third time it's probably going to be okay. The in between. Sprint 4 is where you actually kind of start to hit a sort of rhythm, and to Nick's point, you figure out, okay, this fellow's predictable, this fellow's not predictable. Average that out. Now we've got hopefully a relatively predictable, unpredictable team that can deliver what they say they're going to deliver. Maybe.
Right. And
I've never been a part of
ahead.
a team who started and hit their original commitment. And if I had been, I would be the first person to tell anybody watching that is not reliable yet. We need to do it a few times.
Yeah.
This is weird.
Reliable doesn't mean we get our optimist to be less optimistic. It means we know what his optimism means and how much we have to multiply the given hours, or like you try to get to know your team and then work within those boundaries. I think trying to work within what naturally occurs is always easier than trying to shove things into a box when you're working with people. Having not been a member of really any large teams, I guess I was in choir and I was in band for a day.
Wow, that retro didn't go well, huh?
Yeah, no, I didn't really want to play the instrument they gave me. I wanted to play the drums. They weren't having it. No, here's a rusty cornet that your uncle had in high school.
Wow.
Yeah. Now go be in that band and enjoy it. But
well, and that brings up a good point. Like, how do you determine the ideal team size? How do you know when you have enough people?
Too many.
Or too many. Yeah, like people are sitting around with nothing to do.
Yeah,
Obviously, that's a good sign. But
as a team lead, I usually don't know when I know when I have too many, right? Like that becomes super clear. I'm not as good at saying, well, I don't have enough.
right.
Like there's a capacity and then there's overcapacity. I'm really bad at defining, like I know, like given project, I'll probably need, 4 guys for, I can kind of determine that.
Right.
But I don't know until a team has actually gone through a handful of sprints, if where that right size is. I know what I'm capable of, and I know what I'm capable of managing. But this is such a cop-out answer, but it's totally different. Every single project is so incredibly different that it's hard to just say this is the right size.
Well, yeah,
and I'll
and
take a different approach to that, Chad. Is it's not just too many. It's that we don't have enough work. It's we have too many trying to organize to do the work, as we need to split into smaller groups to be more effective and more efficient. So it's not the amount of work we have to the people that we have. It's how are we actually organizing ourselves to accomplish that stuff too. We recently just had to do that. We had teams too big. We had to split them up. We didn't really know what that was going to do, but we knew we had to, because too many people on a call means too many people not paying attention, and too much inefficiency, and stand-ups going for 45 minutes to an hour instead of 15 minutes tight, right? And getting the right people talking to each other. So we can uncover if we have too many later,
So you're basically then in the business of building a team of teams.
Yeah, you could be. Often.
I think, do we have too many people? Do we have not enough people? And then there's another dimension of, are we keeping them busy, or are we assigning the right people the right things? Is this the right mix, the right structure, the right approach? Or are we just undermanned, just not enough guys on the field?
I will say that the most natural thing is always undersupplied with people, right? I've rarely been on a team where it's like, wow, we have 4 people sitting around with nothing to do all the time. This is so weird. It's more like we have 4 people that are working 60 hours. This needs to change, and let's figure out a way to make it better, right? Either change our velocity so that we don't have to do that, or
expectations,
add some people, or fix expectations. Like, we're not going to be putting this much work out.
Well, and we focused a lot about the development side, but there's also other components to this and natural gray areas. So how much of our time is spent in DevOps and rolling and releasing, and how much of our time is spent in all of those things, right? In communication,
BA work, right?
and BA work, and in QA work, and in documentation and preparing a customer to use this thing. And are we actually, do we have the right team for that, right? Like, why is it all falling on the same group? And when you put on a concert, the band is the team, and we seem to be talking about the development side as the band right now, but boy, there's a lot that goes into a concert, right? You got the sound people, you got your stage hands, you got your, security, you got the venue itself and all those groups. And
the 4-piece band is not driving all 12 semis full of gear and putting it up themselves.
I mean, when you think about it, it sure feels like the band does everything, but they really don't,
Well, and also, like, what are they trying to accomplish? Are they a bar band that plays like twice a month?
I don't think we're in the business of bar bands at SGG, right? Like, we got major.
I was a SharePoint consultant, so I had a lot of very short, well, I was usually the guy, like, just the one guy with a guitar and then that looping machine. Pretend to be a band.
That's Cam Cole from Ted Lasso.
Yes.
That's right.
One-man band. That's you.
That's right.
I'm going to start thinking of Kyle as the bar band of SDG in the SharePoint realm. Like, oh yeah,
it's
a nice small gig. It gets done.
Yeah, I just look at myself like I'm a jetpack. You just like you need to get a little bit farther, a little bit faster. I can help.
I think you're painting yourself with the wrong brush. You're actually the person who's like testing all the instruments before they go on so that the sound is better and that the product is better because of it. So you're the one person out there on the stage before they come out, but you know what? Your role is exceptionally critical.
Right.
Yeah. And if they needed you to, you could play that instrument for them.
Well, have you ever heard some of those roadies play? They're tuning up. All of a sudden, you realize that your dreams of being a rock star are dead because the roadie is 3 times the guitar player you are. The guy at the Skyway is 5 times the guitar player you are, and it's like, yeah, this isn't gonna work out. Back
but how
to
well do they play the rusty clarinet, Kyle? Probably.
I took it apart to oil it, and I never got it back the right way, and I gave up. That was done. So you got forming, and then storming is that period where you got the people. Now you're figuring out kind of how to come together. You're figuring out who's going to do what, and people are getting to know each other, and you've done the intro, onboarding, whatever stuff. Like now you kind of need that practice time to tighten things up.
Are we giving a preview into next week's episode right now, or are we going right into storming?
We're kind of storming is going to overlap.
Oh, okay.
I've been storming this whole time. I don't know about you guys. I'm always storming.
Because there's
always
norming,
looking for trouble.
Yeah, storming and norming, and then performing. So,
I mean, so that brings up a good point. Like when you're doing those first few sprints, you're getting your velocity, you're figuring out your team, you're figuring out how to work together, and you've gotten the rules down, and you're kind of changing them as you go and get things figured out. It's probably not the time to bring on 3 or 4 new people right in that rough, like, wait,
but it oftentimes happens.
We're not behind yet. Why are you doing this to me?
And every time you bring in another person, like you're chucking a new meteorite at the planet, it's going to shake things up. They have to. You're back to storming to fit that person in. It's not as much, but it's a disruption. It's a shakeup.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, like, Nick, you talked about splitting up a team. Are those teams going to hit the ground and be perfection after they've been split? Or depending on how you can split them up, like sometimes you get to choose, sometimes you're going eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or something like that?
Well, and where are we in the process? So if we've already sort of stormed and figured out that this is the best thing for us is splitting up, but we all kind of have established an understanding of how we do work, what's expected of us, right? We've gotten into, part of storming is also uncovering the things you don't think about, and under like our definition of done, right, expands with that. We all go into it having our own understanding of what done is. Oftentimes it's forgetting a great deal of things, right? Whether it's unit tests or testing it, like a lot
testing,
of times.
What's that?
Right. A lot of times that, people just think about their own little compartments and think I have 2 weeks to do the development, but they forget that done means it's been tested and approved, right, and demoed,
right.
And so sometimes we forget that we didn't do that, in our definition of done as part of the team agreement, and so you tweak those things, and those are the things that hold up your velocity because you can't finish something, and so you learn from it, and then another opportunity for that, Kyle, is you've added another person into this and another role or an expansion of the role, and how do we incorporate them into that? And eventually maybe it ends with 2 teams splitting, but you've established those practices. So yes, it is very smooth. Sometimes it's we need to do that now because of you just kind of, I don't know, you just kind of know, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there might be a skills gap.
Yep.
That needs to be filled, and it's like we don't have that skill set here, but if we're gonna do this thing, we added this product to the mix, this point of integration, and now we need this type of person that can handle that piece of it.
Yeah, or you've established that how you're going to build this thing. You've established there are dependencies, that it would be better if we had a group working on this thing and a group working on this thing and this thing, so that it comes together. And it makes more sense to have them off on their own working together and feeding the other teams respectively than it is trying to just have everybody together,
Right. Right.
So there's a lot of things that go into it, that when you're storming, but when you add a new person, you technically do hit a bit of a reset button, because you're now dealing with different outputs and different outcomes and different opportunities that could either enhance or degrade your current performance, right? Everybody gets excited when their sports team gets the right trade or the right draft pick, but once they get started, you find out how often are they working out versus, and I often say, whenever we add a person, we have to slow down to speed up, right? Because there's an onboarding process, and you're dragging other people into training this person and how we do things and what we're all about, and it's gonna take a hit, and then it'll speed up. But oftentimes when you're getting new people, it's because somebody in management or leadership is saying, "Oh, we'll throw more bodies. That'll be triple the productivity,"
Right.
And so you have to, set some expectations as well.
That always works.
Yeah.
Right.
If you take
Crash
take productivity out of the picture and skill sets and all of that, how much does just chemistry between individuals come into play, and how do you kind of fine tune that? How do you look at, are you even aware of like where the chemistry's at and if you can make changes to it? Because there's definitely different chemistry between different people and different mixes of people. Like I get along with 98% of the people on the planet. 2% they're not buying whatever it is I'm selling. They're not buying it. It's just not working. It's oil and water.
They're part of the anti-Kyle fan club.
Something happened. I don't know what it was. Yeah.
I think one of the hardest lessons that I've ever learned as a budding professional is that sometimes it's just not the right fit. You could be as awesome and well-liked and well-rounded and qualified for something, and it's just not for you. And that doesn't mean that you're not good at what you do, and it doesn't mean that you're not qualified. It just means it's not working out for whatever reason, and it is its own form of rejection. But how you're able to kind of recognize that and handle it, I think, helps you and going forward. And it's one of the toughest lessons to both learn and teach somebody as well, because it's really easy to say, hey, this just isn't working out. It's not a right fit. And, it's not you, it's me. Like, that just doesn't resonate, right? But it really is important to know that it has nothing to do really with sometimes your qualifications. It's just how this group is playing just doesn't work for certain people.
Sometimes you break up with the team, and sometimes the team breaks up with you, right?
That's right. That's right. But I really think it's critical.
I was going to ask Nick if, like, what are some like team forming anti-patterns, like what not to do at that stage of team building?
Ooh, good question. Somebody should chime in. I'm always looking for who's stepping up, and are they stepping up too strongly and shutting things out? Do people? Is there a safety concern? Is there a click happening? That's kind of an anti-pattern. You definitely want strong relationships, but not at the sacrifice of others, all the time. Is there a, we're all in the lunchroom, but people are sitting at a different table and you're not invited. Like, that's an anti-pattern, in my opinion. It might equate to those people doing really good work, but we're not actually operating fully as we could. So how do we sort of steer that, that's kind of where I find either you have an anti-patterns, you have one person who's sort of dictating, right? We've all kind of covered the dictator role, but also I've seen it where it's a couple people moving off and then it's just ignoring everybody else. And it has its own value, but it's not sustainable. It will not work out in the end. And you have to figure out how to stop that pretty quick.
So we decided we're cool and you're not, and we're going to go code our stories over here. You guys do your stories, that's fine, but we're going to be over here completely separate and not communicating and not being part of the team and not contributing to the architecture and contributing to the whole team.
Yeah, and I also think like when you get into a people are venting more than they're solutioning, that's an anti-pattern where people are, complaining is taking hold instead of solving. That's one that I watch out for, right?
The overhead
you need to allow
drama.
space. Yeah, you need to allow space for some of that, but it cannot be the norm. And if it is, boy, we've got a problem.
You're gonna have issues. You're probably gonna have conflicts and disagreements and all of that. Drama will eat up your time. All of a sudden, extra meetings, side conversations. So you have to, I think, beware of. Sometimes you get these drama factories on a project. This group of people, or the two people that are sitting next to each other that have formed a clique by proximity. I think, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with our team is hurting themselves? Like, our team is not functioning. We're standing in our own way. How do you change that?
Don't.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, so Nick said something earlier, like a minute ago, that resonated. Like, the click forming thing is a huge anti-pattern, and I struggle with that here because our team isn't just based out of Minneapolis. We've got folks. You'll have a team that's all over the U.S.
Cross-regional, yeah.
Yeah, and one thing that we do immediately is, here's our standing happy hour, right? So, like, our team has, standing happy hours at certain places at certain times. It's hard to include folks from Seattle if you have a standing happy hour in Northeast Minneapolis, for example.
Right.
We try to do other things, but yeah, that click forming thing is exasperated when you're completely a distributed team. I don't know how to fix that.
It's gotten harder too with being remote in general. Now things are starting to get, open up again. So there's opportunities and I think it's important, Chad, to connect with who you have available to you in physical spaces if you can, right? That's critical. And yeah, you have to, you don't want to not do it because it doesn't include everybody, right? Like, there are certain constraints you just have to accept and then try to figure out how to do it, with everybody else. But I think it does require an awareness, a holistic view awareness that somebody has to have, that remembers not to exclude, that remembers, sometimes it can be simply, for those people, if it's expensible, you can send them a gift card to do, like, so they're not forgotten, even though they can't attend, but they're not forgotten. Like, there's things that, that we can do. It just requires a little creativity. And certainly being remote, that's been really tough because, Kyle, I mean, some of it is, you have to take time with one-on-ones and you have to make sure you get to kind of know some people and uncover that this is happening. Sometimes you can't pick it up all the time and people aren't sharing their cameras. So you don't know, you only know they're not talking, like,
more has to happen deliberately in a remote setting than the accidental benefits of proximity, being in the same building, overhearing things, and then jumping into a conversation. Like, that level of communication that happens in person. I think there's just physics involved. Like, if you're in the back seat on a road trip and you're not in the front seat, you're just not going to be as part of the conversation as you want to be, or you're going to annoy the people in the front seat constantly by trying to be a part of something. It's just not. It's just
you come from a big
you're in the
family,
back seat.
Kyle.
Oh yeah, I was in the very back where there weren't even seatbelts.
Yeah, me too.
Just a 1/4-inch foam mattress pad.
Wow,
but
that's
I
luxury.
think that yeah, parting thoughts. We'll talk more about storming next time. But any parting thoughts about forming, fielding, forming?
Be cool.
Be cool, man.
That's it.
Chill on the rules, man.
Yeah. Be cool's a good one, but I think watch for the anti-patterns because they will show up pretty quickly, and you can be like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna ask these two people to work together this time and shuffle things around a little bit to make those things not quite as obvious. And even having the cool kids working with the nerdy kids or whatever you want to call it from a high school metaphor, they're going to learn that the nerdy kids are fairly cool and the cool kids are fairly nerdy, right? I mean, you get out of high school and you're like, oh yeah, I remember being in high school and how horrible it was, but real world can be that way sometimes. So you try to prevent it.
Yeah, I also think it's everybody's responsible when we're forming, right? Like it's not just you can't just look at somebody who has a title of lead or like you have an obligation. Each individual has an obligation, an opportunity to bring everybody else up with them.
Right.
It's not just somebody else's role.
Definitely. I would say that, look, if we could also look at this from the perspective of somebody walking in, becoming a team member, like what can you do as that person? What I do is just get to know people, involve myself, make connections, that kind of stuff. Try to insert myself into things, and take it upon instead of waiting for everything to come to me and everybody to include me and like feeling bad that they don't. People are busy. It's not that they don't like you or want to work with you. I think that people are busy and sometimes their head's not, in that spot. So it's helpful to raise your hand. And especially if you're coming into a team that's been up and running for a while, you got to kind of storm by yourself to kind of fit in. Or a team where part of that team has worked together in the past. And so, challenges, serious challenges.
Yeah. You set how you want to work together and you start looking into how it's going, that's just,
and be cool.
All part of it. Be cool.
Be cool.
It's going to get bumpy.
90% of success. Be cool.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Nick. We'll circle back in a week and talk more about teams.
So much more out there. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, that should do it for us. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.